I found her bracelet on a doorknob. Not on ours. Not in our apartment. On a stranger's doorknob. At a house I wasn't supposed to be in. On a street I didn't know. At a party I didn't know was happening. I stood there for a solid minute, staring at it, hoping maybe I was wrong, that it was just a copy, that someone else had one just like it. But then I turned it over and saw the little engraving. HB, Forever Wild. I had it made for her last year. She said she wore it everywhere. Apparently, everywhere included wild parties behind my back, thrown in houses I'd never seen, with people I'd never met. I only went there because her phone's location pinged by accident. She always turned that off. She told me it drained her battery. But I guess in the rush to slip out unnoticed, she forgot. She said she was at her friend's apartment. A chill girls' night. I even reminded her to grab a jacket. It was chilly out. She smiled and kissed me on the forehead. She looked so innocent, so confident in her lie, like she'd done it before. I never rang the doorbell. I never went inside. I just stood there on the porch of that house as bass thumped through the windows and shadows danced behind curtains. Laughter, yelling, clinking glasses. Some guy burst out the side door holding a beer, looked at me, and nodded like I belonged there. I didn't nod back. I just slipped the bracelet into my pocket and walked away. And right there, in the middle of the sidewalk, I realized something. This wasn't one mistake. This was who she really was when I wasn't watching. The worst part? I didn't even feel anger. Just something worse. Shame. Shame that I thought I was enough for her. Shame that I begged for her attention lately and blamed myself when I couldn't get it. Shame that I knew, deep down, I'd been replaced emotionally long before I found physical proof. And even then, I still wanted her to call me, to say it wasn't what it looked like. She never did. The next morning, I made coffee for one. The silence in our apartment felt like it was mocking me. Her heels were still by the door, her perfume still on the bathroom counter, her wedding dress still hanging in the closet. 12 days until the wedding. I sat on the floor and stared at it. And I knew. I wasn't marrying Hallie. I was marrying an illusion of her I had built in my head. Loyal, loving, grounded. Whoever she was now, she wore glitter on her collarbone, danced under strangers' hands, and left bracelets on doorknobs she didn't own. So I made a plan. Not to confront. Not to shout. Not to cry. But to leave quietly. Disappear so completely that the only thing left of me would be a coffee mug in the drying rack and a note on the table. A note that would say, "You danced like I never existed. So I vanished like I never did." And that was just the beginning. I didn't leave right away. That's the part that haunts me the most. I sat with it. I let it marinate. I even had dinner with her that night, knowing everything I knew. She heated up some leftover ravioli, sat across from me barefoot in an oversized sweater, and talked about linen napkins for the wedding. She laughed when I said, "I don't care what color the napkins are." She said, "You're lucky I do care, because your taste is awful." She laughed like nothing happened. And I played along. I smiled. I nodded. I even reached across the table and touched her hand, because I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go of the life I had imagined. You don't just delete an entire future in one afternoon. Not when you've already seen yourself grow old next to someone. Not when your mother has her dress ready. When your niece is practicing flower tosses in the living room. When you've already written your vows in a notebook under the bed. But something cracked inside me that night. Not a break, just a soft, sinking collapse. Like the floorboards of a home that's looked perfect on the outside, but is rotting underneath. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I opened her closet and sat in front of her dress. It wasn't just a dress. It was a statement. Lace-trimmed, form-fitted, ivory with gold threading. Her dream dress. She'd cried when she tried it on. And I had cried, too, but quietly, from behind my phone as I took her picture in it. She didn't see it. She thought I was smiling. I was, sort of. But I had also never felt so afraid of losing something in my life. Now I understood. You can't lose something that was never really yours. I opened my laptop and began canceling things. Not everything. Not yet. I just started with small steps. The rehearsal dinner. The tux rental. I emailed my groomsman, Langston, told him I might need to talk. Didn't say what about. Then I opened a folder I hadn't looked at in months, all of Hallie's sent invitations, her digital guest tracker, even her backup list for people she hoped wouldn't RSVP. She had all these people excited for our big day. I felt sick just thinking about it. That evening, I pretended everything was fine again. I asked how her day was. She talked about brunch with her cousin. I asked who else came. She hesitated, said it was just girls. Said it quick, too quick. I didn't say a word. But later that night, she fell asleep scrolling through TikTok. Her phone lit up with a message from a name I didn't recognize. Still smiling from last night. You killed it. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The bracelet. The lie. The party. And now this. It wasn't even about the cheating anymore. It was about the ease. The way she could look me in the eye, hold my hand, sleep beside me, all while orchestrating something I was never meant to know about. She was rehearsing a perfect performance. I was the only one still believing the role she was pretending to play. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window with a cup of tea I didn't drink, watching the streetlights flicker. I thought about running away. Literally. Not metaphorically. Just grabbing my wallet and driving until I didn't recognize the area codes anymore. But I knew I couldn't just run. I needed a clean break. A vanishing act so complete that there would be no apology, no confrontation, no second guessing. Only absence. By sunrise, I had booked a small cabin rental on the northern coast, 3 hours up, nestled by pine trees, no neighbors for miles. The kind of place people go when they want to stop hearing the world for a while. I took nothing but my backpack, my old camera, and the ring I never gave her. It was still in its box, untouched. I had planned to surprise her with it the morning of the wedding, a little tradition. A second ring, just for me. I couldn't even look at it now. Before I left, I wrote 2 letters. One for her. One for her parents. Hers was short. You were dancing when I disappeared. I hope you never stop. Her parents' letter was kinder. They didn't deserve the fallout. They'd been warm to me from the beginning. I thanked them for their grace and wished them peace. Then I placed the ring box beside the bracelet she'd left on that stranger's doorknob. I left them both on her pillow. It was the first time I'd felt truly awake in weeks. And then I walked out. No yelling, no begging, no explanation. Just silence. Because sometimes the loudest goodbye is the one no one hears. The cabin was quiet in a way that made you notice your own breathing. I hadn't realized how loud my life had been. The wedding calls, the emails, the conversations with people who didn't care about me, just about the show. I arrived just after sunset, and the air smelled like rain-soaked pine. I didn't bring much. 1 bag, a stack of old notebooks, the book she gave me last Christmas, unread, still wrapped in the ribbon she tied around it. I brought it to remind myself of the person she pretended to be. The first night there, I sat on the edge of the bed for hours doing nothing. No TV. No phone. Just silence pressing against the windows. My hands kept shaking. Not from fear, from withdrawal. From her. I kept checking my phone even though I had shut it off hours earlier and left the SIM card in a drawer. I still had that instinct. That reflex to wait for her name to light up my screen. But I had erased myself. If she was looking for me, which I doubted, she wouldn't find a single clue. That thought brought me the first real comfort I'd felt in weeks. The next morning, I woke up to find the power had gone out. Some freak windstorm overnight, branches scattered across the road leading back to town. There was no signal, no radio. I sat on the porch with a blanket and a notebook and, for the first time, wrote something that wasn't a budget list or a seating chart. I wrote about how it felt to pretend I didn't know she'd been lying. I wrote about how I had convinced myself she would change. I even wrote about the moment I realized she never really loved me, not the way I loved her. She loved my loyalty, my quietness, the fact that I never said no. She loved being adored. But she didn't love me. And I didn't love who I had become with her, someone so afraid of conflict, I made silence my full-time job. 3 days passed before anything unusual happened. I was chopping wood behind the cabin when I heard footsteps, quick, stumbling ones, like someone lost. I turned and saw a man maybe in his late 20s, soaked from head to toe, wearing a soaked hoodie and holding a phone in the air. "Dude," he gasped. "Do you have service out here?" I told him no. He looked pale. "My car crashed about a mile up," he said. "Skidded into a ditch. I've been trying to call someone for 2 hours." I brought him inside, gave him a towel, poured some coffee from the stovetop. He paced around, jittery. "You live here?" he asked. "No. Just getting away." "From what?" I hesitated. "A wedding," I said finally. "That isn't happening." He winced like he understood too well. "Man, same," he muttered. "Almost married the wrong person last year. Got lucky. Found out 2 days before she was sneaking off with her ex. It's like, some people don't know what loyalty means anymore." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. But something strange struck me then, how random it was, how close his story felt. He didn't ask any more questions. Eventually, I helped him back to his car, pushed it free from the ditch with some effort, and watched him disappear back toward the highway. That night, my mind started racing again. What if that hadn't been a coincidence? What if Hallie had sent someone? What if she wasn't as clueless as I believed? I knew it sounded paranoid, but grief makes everything slippery. And betrayal, when it's fresh, makes you see patterns everywhere. Still, something about that guy lingered. I didn't even catch his name. So, I waited. The next morning, while I was out near the woodshed, I saw fresh tire tracks where there hadn't been any the night before. I hadn't left the cabin. No one else was nearby. Someone had come during the night. And I knew in that moment that my disappearance hadn't been clean enough. Somehow, some way, she was looking for me. And maybe she wasn't alone. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. At least not the way people usually describe fear. It wasn't that I thought someone would break down the door or find me in the middle of nowhere. It was something deeper. A sense that my vanishing act wasn't complete. That I had misjudged her, not just in who she was, but in how far she might go once she realized I was gone. The tire tracks haunted me. They were real. I stood over them at sunrise and followed them to the bend in the road, where they disappeared into the thick forest. They hadn't come from the highway. They came from behind the cabin, the service road, the one no one used. The one Hallie didn't even know existed. Unless someone told her. And that's when a name hit me like a brick. Langston. My best man. My only real friend in the entire wedding party. He was the one person who knew where I was staying. I never gave him the exact address, but I mentioned the area, the rental style, even said something dumb like, "It's the kind of place where no one could find you unless they really tried." He laughed. He said he envied the idea. What if he told her? Not out of betrayal, necessarily. Maybe she reached out. Maybe she cried. Maybe she spun some story about me having a breakdown. Maybe he just wanted to help. But now, I wasn't sure I trusted anyone. I drove into the nearest town, a small coastal stretch where everything looked like it had been forgotten in the 1970s. I found a dusty little diner that smelled like burned coffee and syrup. I sat in the corner, facing the windows, and opened my phone for the first time in 5 days. I'd replaced the SIM card with a backup I hadn't used in a year. The notifications were instant, mostly from vendors and spam, but one caught my eye. Langston, hey, she's looking for you. She says she's scared. She's asking everyone if you're okay. Another message right after it. Langston, I didn't tell her anything. But man, what happened? So she was looking, and she hadn't found me. Yet, I didn't reply. Instead, I checked my email. Among all the junk, one message stood out, sent at 3:14 a.m. the night after I left. No subject, no body, just a single attachment. A photo. I opened it. It was Hallie, sitting on the edge of our bed, still in her dress from the night I disappeared. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her makeup was smudged, but not from crying. From where? From hours. From what looked like a meltdown in slow motion. In her hands? The ring box. Still closed. On the floor next to her? The bracelet. It looked posed. Intentional. Almost like she wanted me to see it. I stared at it for a long time, then closed the email. I knew what was happening. She wanted control back. This wasn't about finding me out of love. It was about narrative. About damage control. If people asked why the wedding got canceled, she couldn't admit to what she did. She needed to twist the ending. Needed to make me look unstable, unpredictable, unreasonable. I drove back to the cabin in silence. The pines blurred by my window. I kept seeing her face, not the real one, but the expression she wore in that photo. That mix of desperation and calculation. Hallie never lost control without a reason. And if she had lost it, it meant things were slipping faster than she could manage. That night, I stayed up again, waiting by the window. And just after midnight, headlights appeared through the trees. They didn't come down the driveway. They parked at a distance. Stayed there. I turned off all the lights. Waited. 10 minutes passed. Then the car backed out. Gone. I stood there, heart pounding, not knowing whether it was her or someone else sent in her place. But now I was certain. She hadn't just noticed I was gone. She was hunting for me, and I had no idea what her next move would be. The next morning, I left before sunrise and drove 3 towns over. I paid cash for a burner phone at a gas station that doubled as a bait shop. There was a dusty vending machine outside with faded stickers on the glass and one working row of potato chips. It felt like I was in a different decade. That's what I wanted, something forgettable. Somewhere no one would bother tracking. I activated the burner using a random birthday and a zip code from a state I'd never lived in. I didn't want to be paranoid. But the more I thought about how carefully Hallie had managed every detail of our lives, our social image, our guest list, her curated feeds, the more I realized how dangerous losing control might feel to someone like her. If she couldn't fix it, she'd rewrite it. If she couldn't rewrite it, she'd erase it. And if she couldn't erase it, maybe she'd try to erase me. On my drive back, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. A black crossover SUV. Too clean for this part of the state. It followed me for about 30 miles. Never close, never distant, just there. I took 3 wrong turns on purpose. It stayed with me. Then, suddenly, at a 4-way intersection, it vanished down a side road. Could have been nothing. But my gut didn't think so. When I got back to the cabin, I packed everything. Not in a panic, in silence. Precise. Careful. I left no trace. Wiped down surfaces, burned the old notes I had written. I left the book Hallie gave me behind, neatly placed on the fireplace mantel. The ribbon she tied around it was still intact. It felt like a symbol now. When I no longer needed. I didn't go home. I didn't go to my parents' place. I didn't go anywhere anyone would think to look. I headed inland to an old property my grandfather used to own, deep in the woods near a lake with no name. The kind of place only family knew about, and barely even that. My name was still on the deed, but no one had touched it in over a decade. The driveway was half swallowed by nature. The house creaked and groaned like it was waking from a long sleep. It was perfect. I stayed there for 3 days. I didn't text. I didn't post. I didn't exist. Until Langston broke the silence again. He found the burner number. I don't know how. I still don't know how. Maybe I had slipped. Maybe someone saw me. Maybe I was never as invisible as I thought. His message was short. Emerson, she's lying to people. Saying you're sick. That you're not mentally well. That she canceled the wedding to protect you. Her story's spreading. Are you okay? I read it 3 times. Then I powered off the phone. Of course she did. Of course she twisted it. Because she couldn't be the one who got left. Not Hallie. Not the bride who posted 2 weeks until I marry my best friend Red Heart on Instagram just days before I vanished. Not the woman who cried in every bridal shop and made Pinterest boards labeled Forever Us. She would rather convince the world that I'd lost my mind than admit she'd been caught. And she was winning. Because I had disappeared. And in doing so, I gave her the space to rewrite the ending. I sat on the porch of that cabin, staring out at the water as clouds moved in. It was the kind of storm you feel in your bones before it starts, a low-pressure buzz in the air, birds going quiet, water stilling. I didn't even flinch when the thunder rolled. I just sat there thinking one thought, again and again. I need to come back, but not the way she expected. Not angry, not begging, not even to fight. I had something better than revenge. I had the truth. And this time, she wouldn't see it coming. I didn't rush back into the world. I watched it from a distance first. For a week, I stayed in that lake house, off-grid except for a small solar charger I used to power the burner phone when I absolutely needed to. I spent my days sitting by the water, scribbling notes and plans in the back of an old field guide. At night, I listened to the wind in the trees and tried to make peace with the idea that the person I had wanted to marry might be capable of something far darker than I ever imagined. Not just betrayal, but manipulation. It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't even the partying. It was what came after. How effortlessly she pivoted to protect her image. How quickly she painted herself as the victim. I kept thinking about her friends, her mother, maybe even people we both knew from work, all whispering, "Poor Hallie. Can you believe what he did to her?" She had stripped my silence of its dignity and turned it into a weapon against me. So I decided to fight back. Quietly. Strategically. Without her knowing. The first step was digital. I used an old laptop I found in the storage closet at the lake house, my grandfather's, probably, and connected to a local library's public Wi-Fi network from the parking lot after hours. I created a brand new email address. Anonymous. No traceable metadata. Then I contacted Langston. Not by name. Just a message he'd understand. If you still believe in truth, check her cloud backups. You know which account. Look for the album marked Marcy's Lake House, unfiltered. Password hasn't changed since sophomore year. I sent it. Nothing else. I didn't expect a reply, but he knew what I was referring to. It was an old shared account from years back, a cloud folder Hallie used before she switched phones. She always bragged about never deleting anything, just in case. I figured if there was anything real, anything damning, she wouldn't have been smart enough to wipe all of it. 2 days passed. Then the reply came. I saw them. You were right. She wasn't just cheating. Emerson, she was mocking you. With them. Out loud. There were videos. Clips of her drunk, laughing at messages I'd sent. Screenshots of my texts. Let me know when you're home safe. You okay? Read out loud in slurred, cruel voices while guys around her jeered. One clip was of her reading a letter I'd once written her during a rough week at work. It was private, intimate, kind. She was reading it to a room full of strangers, with a bottle of champagne in her hand, crying from laughter as she added her own commentary. She called me pathetic between sips. So sensitive, she joked, mimicking my voice. I felt the blood drain from my body reading Langston's message. I knew she'd been careless. I didn't know she'd been cruel. Langston ended his message with a single question. What do you want me to do? I stared at that question for a long time. There was a part of me that wanted to bury it all. Let her rot in her own dishonesty. Leave the truth hidden like some decaying time capsule, only to be found years later when it no longer mattered. But no, not this time. Hallie hadn't just hurt me. She had twisted the truth. She'd performed it, rehearsed it, and sold it to everyone we knew. So I gave Langston simple instructions. Tell the truth. Not for me, for them. I asked him to share the videos with a few key people, not publicly, but privately. Her maid of honor, her mother, her mentor at the nonprofit she worked for. These were people who adored her, who needed to know what kind of person she had become when the cameras weren't rolling and the likes weren't flowing. I didn't watch any of the clips myself. I didn't need to. The betrayal had already calcified in me, not fresh, but fossilized. Still there, still ugly, but no longer raw. And once Langston confirmed it was done, I disappeared again. I turned the burner off, left the lake house key on the kitchen counter, walked into town and boarded the first bus heading south. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew this much. I wasn't running anymore. I was just living again. Finally, without her shadow trailing behind me. The bus ride south was quiet. A faded blue coach with cracked vinyl seats and the kind of smell that reminded you just how much this world forgets about its edges. I sat near the back, tucked behind a sleeping teenager in headphones and an older woman flipping through a crossword book. Nobody asked where I was going. That was the beauty of it. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I wasn't the groom who vanished. I was just a guy on a bus, going nowhere in particular. And for once, that felt like power. I ended up in a small coastal town where the sky felt lower and the seagulls never shut up. I found a room in a rundown motor lodge, the kind with thin walls and carpet that smelled like wet socks. But it was mine. I paid in cash. The clerk didn't ask for ID. He didn't even flinch when I said I didn't need the Wi-Fi code. For days, I didn't do much except walk. There was a pier that curved out over the ocean like it was trying to escape the land. I walked to the end of it every morning with a cup of cheap coffee and stared at the horizon like it owed me something. I didn't think about Hallie. Not directly. But I thought about the version of me that had loved her. That version was gone now, but he still lingered in pieces, in the reflex to check my phone, in the way I held my breath when I saw a car that looked like hers. It was during one of those morning walks that my peace finally cracked. I saw a man sitting at the edge of the pier, legs swinging over the side, talking into a phone. I wasn't trying to listen, but when I walked past, I caught 3 words that stopped me in my tracks. Yeah, Emerson Harlow. I froze. No one knew that name out here. I hadn't used it once. I hadn't written it down. I hadn't even spoken it aloud in days. But I knew what I'd heard. My name. My full name. I kept walking calmly, at first, then turned into the nearby bait shack and waited. The man walked past a few minutes later, still on the phone, looking down at the pavement. I watched him leave, then doubled back to the pier, heart pounding. How had she found me? Or was this something else? The paranoia was back, roaring to life. I spent the next 2 hours watching every face, every car, every subtle glance. The feeling that someone was one step behind me clung to my skin like humidity. I went back to the motor lodge, packed everything in under 10 minutes, and was on the road before the sun dipped behind the clouds. I didn't stop until I hit the desert. I drove straight through, past dry gas stations and abandoned diners and flat, endless roads that looked like they led to the end of the world. I needed somewhere quiet again, somewhere truly forgotten. I found a roadside motel in the middle of New Mexico that was so empty, I wasn't sure it was open. But the sign buzzed. A man behind the desk asked no questions. He gave me a key. Room 5. It was there, that night, sweating under a broken ceiling fan, that I opened the burner phone one last time. 3 voicemails. 2 from unknown numbers. 1 from Langston. I played his first. "I don't know where you are, man, but you need to hear this." She's unraveling. Completely. She confronted her mom after the videos got out. Her aunt canceled her RSVP. She's telling people you forged the footage, said you hired someone to frame her. It's getting ugly. The second voicemail played before I could process the first. It was Hallie. Her voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. "You made your point. You embarrassed me. Congratulations. But this doesn't end the way you think it does. People forget. Memories fade. But yours will rot. Alone. In whatever hole you're hiding in. You'll come back eventually, Emerson. You'll need people again. And when you do, no one will believe your version. Because mine is already written." She hung up without a goodbye. I stood there in that dusty room, phone pressed to my ear, as her words echoed in my mind. She was right about one thing: people forget. But not everyone. Not the ones who needed to know. Not the ones who saw the real her when the mask slipped. The third voicemail was short. Langston again. She's hosting something. A healing circle, some kind of public engagement thing, claiming it's for mental health. It's a stunt. But she's using your name, Emerson. You should see what she's posting. She's making you a villain. That was the last straw. She wanted a narrative? She wanted control? Fine. But I still had one thing she didn't know I kept. The original video of the night I found the bracelet. My shadow stepping into frame. Her laughing. Not surprised. Not guilty. Just smug. Like she thought I'd never leave. She was wrong. And now, I was going to remind her, some ghosts don't stay buried. It's strange how something as small as a file on a hard drive can hold the weight of everything you need to take back your life. That night in the desert motel, with Hallie's voice still fresh in my ears, I opened the folder I thought I'd deleted months ago. It was tucked away in a buried archive, nothing labeled clearly, just an innocuous string of characters only I would recognize. Inside were 4 files. 1 was the video from the night I found her bracelet. 2 were screen captures of her messages to that guy from the party, the ones I had originally sent to myself and forgotten. The last file was something I hadn't opened since I recorded it, a quiet audio clip of my conversation with Langston days before I vanished. In it, I told him everything, not as revenge, but as clarity. He had asked me point blank, "Are you sure she's not just confused?" And I had said, calmly, "No. She knows exactly what she's doing. She just doesn't think I'll do anything about it." She was wrong. By morning, I was in another state, sitting at a clean desk in a modest co-working space that I paid for by the hour. No traceable connection. No familiar face. Just a secure internet line and a fresh account on a video sharing platform under a generic name. I didn't post everything. That wasn't the goal. I didn't want to destroy her. I didn't want public humiliation. I wanted the truth to reach the people who mattered. So I sent the files to the ones who'd believed her story the most: her aunt, her mentor, even the florist who'd sent me a refund with a note that said, "Hope you're getting help." One by one, I gave them quiet evidence. Nothing angry, nothing dramatic. Just the facts. And then I logged off. For good. It was over. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Langston. No greeting, no commentary. Just a screenshot. It was Hallie's account, deactivated. The comments on her last post, a photo from that ridiculous healing circle, had turned. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that made it clear people knew. The ones who wanted to see the truth had seen it. And those who didn't? Well, they were never mine to win back. I left the country shortly after. No dramatic send-off. Just a one-way flight to Portugal and a small rented flat near the edge of Lisbon where the ocean crashes against black rocks and no one speaks unless they really need to. I got a job at a small tech consultancy. Started over. Clean. Quiet. Free. And maybe that's the real end. Not the explosion, not the confrontation, but the peace. I go days without thinking of her now. And when I do, it's not anger. It's gratitude. She taught me what I'll never accept again. What I'll never settle for. A few weeks ago, I met someone. Her name's Elise. She's nothing like Hallie. She's patient. Quiet. Kind in ways that don't need to be announced. We've had coffee 3 times. No expectations. No rushing. But last time, she looked up at me over her cup and said, "You seem like someone who's been through something big, but you're still soft." And I smiled. Because for the first time in a long, long while, I finally felt like myself again. And That was the real ending I needed.